Good afternoon. My name is Nathan Stelter, president here at the Stelter Company. Thanks as always for joining us for a webinar today. I'll get to introductions, which I'm very excited to introduce longtime friend and colleague Steve Clark here. But first, I want to say a couple quick words about the webinar series. Although I know most of you are familiar with it, as a trusted leader in asset-based giving, Stelter is very passionate about supporting this industry and nonprofits with fresh ideas and practical guidance. And we're proud to help build connections across the sector and always pleased to offer this series of free webinars, bringing you experts like Steve from across the country to help unlock revenue throughout your development portfolios. Today's webinar is our second of 2025. We've got an amazing lineup coming the rest of the year, including a couple of our colleagues from Mayo Clinic sharing with us how to pivot and turn planned gift inquiries into planned gifts. Lindy Nash, partner at CCK Bequest Management, and I think current CGP board member is addressing the top 10 bequest administration roadblocks and how to get around them. We've also got Jim Langley sharing his guidance on the autobiographical interview, as well as our own Lynn Gomer sharing with us some of the Giving USA insights. So excited for those coming. Keep an eye on your inbox and look for your personal invitations so you can register for that. But if you do want to view any of our previous webinars, feel free to go to stelter.com/webinars. Those recordings from previous years and this one as well will be there. In regards to today's webinar, as I mentioned, I have the pleasure of introducing Steve Clark, who's the Assistant Vice President for Gift Planning at Virginia Tech University in Blacksburg, Virginia. In Steve's role, he provides leadership to Virginia Tech's gift planning efforts and supports its principal gifts team. He has over 30 years of advancement experience, having previously served as Assistant Vice Chancellor for University Development at NC State University, as well as several gift planning positions throughout Virginia Tech. Before Steve's career in advancement, he practiced law with firms in Richmond and Abingdon, Virginia, and earned his BA and JD degrees from the University of Virginia, just up the road. He's a former member of our National Board of Directors at CGP and is our current chair of the CGP's Leadership Institute, which is doing amazing work and a great group of folks advancing our profession. So excited today about having Steve share this insight, and I will hand it over to Steve.
Well, Nathan, thank you so much. I'd like for us to start with an experiment that was done in 1990 at Stanford. Half the participants were asked to tap out a song by rapping their fist on a table. The songs they were asked to tap out were easily recognizable songs, things like Happy Birthday or The Star-Spangled Banner. The other half of the participants were asked to guess which songs the first half were playing. Now, in the course of the experiment, those who were tapping the songs were asked, how many do you think that your colleagues will get right? And those who were tapping thought, well, let's see, we are tapping out 120 different songs. I'm guessing about half will be recognized. Roughly 60 was the number that the tappers guessed would be correctly identified. The reality was, of 120, only 3 of the songs were correctly identified. This experiment helps illustrate the curse of knowledge. Whenever we know something, one of the curses that we deal with is that we forget what it's like not to have that knowledge. And this can be a challenge when we're trying to communicate that knowledge to someone else. Think about our work with planned giving. Just like the tappers in this experiment who had the songs playing in their head, we have all this planned giving knowledge playing in our head. However, we often forget what it's like not to have that knowledge. And as a result, our communication efforts sometimes can fall short. And that's what this webinar is all about. How can we get better at helping our colleagues learn more about planned giving so they in turn can help us? We're going to talk about 3 different topics in particular. First, we're going to remind ourselves, why is it important to focus some time and effort on helping our colleagues? Second, we're going to review some of the research that psychologists and communicators have uncovered into how we learn and why we learn. And third, we're going to explore some tactics based on this research that can help us help our colleagues learn better. First, let's remind ourselves of why it's important to take some time to help our colleagues learn more about planned giving. And the importance can be summed up in a single word: leverage. Archimedes once said, "If I had a lever long enough, I could move the earth." Think about what leverage could do with our planned giving programs. If we had more gift officers who knew a little bit about planned giving, think about how far that leverage could move our planned giving programs. In particular, think about how we could receive more referrals and more gifts. To help illustrate this, let's take a look at a couple of data points. The first data point I want to share is a chart that comes from a benchmarking survey that was done by TIAA Caspic, one of the nation's largest planned gift administration firms. Every year, they survey their client base, which consists of roughly 120 medium and large nonprofits across all parts of the country and all sectors in the charitable landscape. Their clients reported that for every planned giving officer in their organization, there were roughly 10 major gift officers. Now think about the ratio in your own organization. Now maybe it's not 10 to 1, but is it 3 to 1, 4 to 1, 5 to 1? Odds are there are a significant number of gift officers doing something other than planned giving as compared to those who focus on planned giving. The second data point I want to share is data coming from the Council for the Advancement and Support of Education, or CASE, for those of you who are working higher ed and are familiar with the work that they do. Every year, CASE surveys member institutions for their fundraising results. From the survey, member institutions disclose that for every dollar of the more complex life income gifts, charitable Maynard trusts or charitable gift annuities, $14 were reported coming from bequest intentions and other similar revocable commitments. Now let's put these two data points together. The biggest pot of potential dollars that organizations can receive comes from the simplest gifts. Moreover, the biggest supply of gift officers comes from those gift officers who don't necessarily possess that much technical experience, but therefore doesn't need the technical experience to close the biggest pot of potential dollars. If we can have this large pool of gift officers who focus on this large pot of bequest intention commitments, think about what that can do for all of our planned giving programs. Let's now pivot to some observations that have been made through the research of psychologists and communicators as they've explored how people learn and why people learn. There are three areas in particular I'd like for us to take a look at. First, let's explore some of the physical limits in how we learn. Second, let's look at how we put information together, some of the mechanics of learning. And third, let's take a moment to consider, why do people expend the energy to learn? First, let's take a look at the physical limits of learning. Some of you may already be familiar with a book written by Nobel laureate Daniel Kahneman entitled Thinking Fast and Slow. This was a bestseller about 10 to 15 years ago. This was a book designed for a mass audience to help us learn more about how our brains work. A theme throughout the book is the concept of cognitive strain. Stated differently, What cognitive strain is referring to is the idea that our brains are like muscles. Just like our muscles can become taxed and not perform as well, our brains can become taxed and not perform as well. This becomes more apparent when we think about how our brains work. Our brains consume lots of glucose, lots of oxygen, lots of blood flow. As we think about all this energy that's being consumed, we have to be reminded that energy within our bodies is finite. We only have a certain amount of oxygen at any one time, a certain amount of glucose at any one time. The amount of blood in our bodies is finite. So as we consume all of these energy sources, the capacity of our brain to work well declines. To help illustrate these capacity limits, I'd like to share with you the results of a survey that a communicator did to better understand the impact of her presentations. She would survey her audiences 24 hours after she would do a presentation to see what they would learn. She found that even though only a day had passed, only about 10% of the information she had shared had been remembered. As we think about capacity limits, uh, this may help us understand better why it's important to use concrete, easy to understand language. To help illustrate that, I'd like for us all uh, to undergo a little exercise. Wherever you are, close your eyes, and I want you to reflect on what your mind sees and experiences as I read out the following words. Okay, everybody ready? Popcorn, fireworks, puppy, truth, righteousness, acquaintance. Okay, you can open your eyes now. I suspect when the first three words were being read out, the most you had fairly vivid images and sensations come into your mind. You perhaps smelled the popcorn being popped. You could hear the boom of the fireworks. You may feel how soft the puppy was. But think about what popped in your head when the second three words were read. Now, we all know what truth is, what righteousness is, what an acquaintance is. But these words are more abstract. It's harder to construct an image of these words as compared to words around which we have so many memories. This is the concept of mental Velcro. These are words used in the book called Made to Stick by Chip and Dan Heath. The idea behind mental Velcro is that certain words have more hooks in them. It's like a Velcro strip. And when we can use words that have more mental hooks, such as fireworks, where we've seen fireworks and seen situations around fireworks, it evokes lots of memories. It can be easier for us to recall that image, that idea, when we can use language that is easier for us to access, easier for us to recall. We make our brains work less hard. And as a result, comprehension can be easier. How many of you have ever stayed up way too late one night watching a movie you had no intention of watching? You're channel surfing, you're about ready to go to bed, and then you see this movie and you see this beautiful woman walk into a room. And before long, you're wondering, is Ilsa going to go off with Rick or with Victor? And then an hour and a half goes by and you stayed up way past your bedtime. This is an illustration of another concept that Chip and Dan Heath talk about in their book. This concept is called the gap theory. The idea is that when a gap in our knowledge opens up, we become uncomfortable. So we will expend more energy to fill that gap of knowledge so we can relieve the discomfort. This is why we'll stay up late watching a movie we had no intention of watching. Or think about talk radio. Think about how a radio host just before a commercial break will give a tease as to the next topic after the break. The host is trying to create a knowledge gap, a curiosity gap, to entice you to stay through the commercial break. So your curiosity gap, your knowledge gap can be filled by continuing to listen to the program afterwards. The gap theory can also explain why stories are such powerful tools in helping us put information together. Think about how a story is put together. It typically creates a gap in knowledge that causes us to want to stick around to resolve. Think about the classic hero story. We meet the hero. The hero encounters a challenge. Then we become curious. How will the hero resolve the challenge and be victorious? Stories are also useful because they allow us to simulate what it's like to be in someone else's shoes. When we tell a story, we can help someone feel the emotions of what it's like to be in that situation. We can help better understand the choices that the person in that situation may have to deal with. In the process, by helping us experience additional emotions or confront different questions to address, we're helping our listener create more mental Velcro, more memories that make it easier to recall the message that the story is trying to convey. Now, we all know that filling a curiosity gap or telling stories is not enough to acquire a new skill. We need practice. Um, some of you may be familiar with a book written by Jeffrey Colvin that goes into the elements of deliberate practice, the type of practice that really helps us acquire a new skill successfully. There are two factors that Jeffrey Colvin talks about that I want to call out that I think are especially applicable for our work with Plan Giving or with Major Gift colleagues to learn Plan Giving. The first is the importance of immediate feedback. We can expend hours practicing something, but if we're not getting feedback as to whether we're doing the right thing, all of that effort is wasted. The second factor in what makes for effective practice is repetition. Um, think about the difference between getting a voice lesson or a golf lesson versus having a voice coach or a golf coach. A lesson can provide immediate feedback on what we're doing right or wrong, but that alone is not going to help us build a skill. It may help in a short period of time, but something more is needed in order for us to sustain that growth. That's where having a coach is really helpful because a coach can help us with the repetition that is needed in order for our lessons to be absorbed and retained. Some of you may have heard of the book by Robert Cialdini called Influence, which explores what motivates people's behavior. There are a couple of factors that are especially important as we think about how can we coach our colleagues to learn more about plan giving. One is the importance of authority. We are always hardwired to follow the cues of people in authority when we're deciding how to behave. Um, we tend not to behave in ways unless we feel like it's going to be validated by people in authority. Not only do we look to people in authority in deciding how to behave, we also look to the people around us. Many of you are already familiar with the concept of social proof, how we look for validation from others in deciding what to do. Think about the last time you watched a sitcom. Have you ever wondered why uh, the TV executives put a soundtrack in the show? Can't we figure out what's funny on our own? TV executives have learned that when we hear other people laugh, we're more likely to find the show funny than if we didn't have that soundtrack. Similarly, think about all the times you do business with somebody and you're asked for a Google review or Yelp review. Businesses know that potential customers are looking for the behavior of others. So they want to compile as much evidence of satisfied customers to help win new business because they understand that people are going to be more likely to give their business a try if they see other people already using their business. That's some of the research that can help us in figuring out how we can be better coaches of our colleagues so we can uh, uh, better help them help us grow our plan giving programs. But what are some tactics based on that research that we can actually use? Well, let's dive into a few. I suspect that many of the tactics that we're talking about are things that you're already doing. So I hope this will help validate things you're already doing. And if not, hopefully there'll be some things that you can take away that will help you. Um, there's not any single tactic that will guarantee success, but the more that we can do, the greater we increase the chances that our colleagues will have an interest in learning more and will actually do so. The first tactic is to focus on the basics. Let's remember what Daniel Kahneman teaches us about how our brains work, the idea of cognitive strain. We want to limit how much we are teaching our colleagues only to those concepts that are easiest to access and that are things that our colleagues are most likely to encounter. If we limit ourselves to what's easy to access and what our colleagues are most likely to encounter, we increase the chances that our colleagues will actually retain what is being learned and will actually use what we're teaching them. I would suggest we focus on three particular types of gifts in particular: bequest intentions and things that look like bequest intentions, like beneficiary designations, qualified shareable distributions, and non-cash gifts, primarily stocks and real estate. Let's not take our the limited time and energy of our colleagues on gifts that may be harder to understand and maybe less common. I mean, do our colleagues really need to know about retained life estates or charitable lead trusts? Now, I saw where a number of you come from medium and large nonprofits. And I suspect many of you work at nonprofits that have robust life income gift programs. Uh, a question to ask yourself is, uh, do you have major gift colleagues that need to know something about life income gifts? Maybe in the size of program that you have, they don't need to know anything about life income gifts, but maybe they do. But even if you do work at a organization that has a robust life income gift program, let me suggest to you to think about what do our gift officer colleagues really need to know about life income gifts. Do they really need to know the difference between a charitable gift annuity and a charitable remainder trust? Now, to be clear, we all do. We need to know how gifts can be put together safely and how they can work well for the donors and for our organizations. But does a colleague who doesn't spend much time in plan giving need to know these details? Perhaps we should focus on the basics of how a income gift works And one or two key benefits: if we can limit what we share to things that are concrete, easy to understand, and are things that our colleagues are more likely to encounter, we increase the chances that our messages will be retained and that our colleagues will use the information. Related to focusing on the basics is the concept of the rule of three. Communicators are well versed with the rule of three because they understand it's a powerful communications tool to increase comprehension. It's based on science that has discovered that we can remember 3 or 4 chunks of information pretty well. But once we are offered more information than that, our memory retention falls dramatically. To help illustrate the power of the rule of three, let's think about some well-known passages that come from American history. Let's think about the Declaration of Independence: life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness. Let's think about the Gettysburg Address. Think about how it ends: the government of the people, by the people, for the people shall not perish from the earth. As we're coaching our colleagues, if we can try to group our information in chunks of 3 to help make it memorable, like these famous passages from American history, we increase our chances of that information being retained, because we're playing into our natural capacity limits and observing them, and thereby avoiding taxing our colleagues' brains so much that they fail to remember much of anything. In an effort to reduce the cognitive strain on our colleagues, it's really important to focus on the language that we use in talking about plan giving. Let's not use fancy words like bequest or estate. Now, among us, that may feel very natural, but a lot of people find these words to be foreign. Estates may feel like something a Rockefeller has, not somebody like me or somebody like the donors I'm working with. Instead, let's use words that are easily understood. Let's talk about making gifts through wills. Most people know what a will is. Or if we're talking about some other vehicle, let's just start by talking about a gift after your lifetime. We can get into the technical details once we're further along the line, but in terms of conveying the basics, let's focus on language that's easy for our colleagues to grasp. If we need to talk about life income gifts, let's not start by talking about charitable Maynard trusts or charitable gift annuities, and see if we can avoid using those words when talking with our colleagues at all. Instead, let's talk about gifts that pay you back. A colleague may not be familiar with what a trust is or an annuity is. That may be daunting to them, but it's pretty easy to grasp what a gift that pays you back, what concept we're trying to communicate. Similarly, let's make sure we're equipping our colleagues with the tools to have conversations. Let's rather than forcing them to develop questions on their own, not that that's not a bad exercise, but to help get them going, let's equip them with some questions to get them started. Let's also equip them with handouts that give them tools to confirm a bequest or to share bequest language that they in turn can give to donors. The more we can reduce the cognitive strain of our colleagues by being careful with the language we use and being proactive with tools we can share with them, the more that they'll be confident that they can adopt that language, talk about it, and have successful conversations with donors. Let's think about how we learn ourselves. Do we learn better or by having somebody tell us something, or do we learn better by puzzling through a question on our own? The gap theory suggests that most people are going to do are going to learn more if they puzzle through questions on their own, because they're forced to engage with resolving the question. When there's a question that they have to resolve, it becomes uncomfortable, and they're going to expend the energy to try to fill that. So let's think about how we can incorporate more questions in our work with our colleagues. Now, there may be some opportunities to do that through more formal structures. Maybe we set up various case studies. Maybe we do role play, finding situations where our colleagues have to think about what questions they would want to ask, or what strategy they would want to pursue, what language would they choose. But let's not limit ourselves to formal settings. Let's think about our everyday conversations with our colleagues. Uh, would we be better off simply answering a question directly, or when it's feasible, answering a question with a question? Now, clearly, there's some times where we have to answer directly because our colleagues will lack the foundational knowledge for the particular question being asked. But think about how, in your everyday conversations with colleagues, you can answer a question with a question. And to think about how powerful that can be, think about classes you may have had when you were in school. Think about the Socratic method. The Socratic method has been around for several millennia, and it's been proven to help facilitate learning. Because when we have to grapple with a question on our own, we're going to remember our efforts to resolve that question, and our retention will be more lasting. Let's not also use questions to help our colleagues learn. Let's also share stories. As we saw earlier, stories are great ways to help our colleagues better understand what it's like to be in a conversation with a planned gift donor. We get to share what it's like for us to have a conversation with a prospective donor, what issues a donor may be concerned about, what type of language may work. Now, we don't need that many stories to share, but we should all take a few moments to have several that help illustrate key points. Right now, I'm thinking of a story that at Virginia Tech we tell all the time because of the numerous lessons that it offers. This is a story that helps illustrate the importance of prospecting and how a little bit of extra effort can help yield significant results. Uh, it helps illustrate the importance of relationship building. Again, planned gifts are not just about technical knowledge, but being able to help walk through what relationship building looks like can help our colleagues see what a planned gift solicitation may look like. And it can help our colleagues see how they can have outsized impact with simple gifts that they can manage. Uh, Gifts both through bequest intentions, but also through current use gifts, through blended gifts that can help them be successful. Think just as we tell this particular story a lot at Virginia Tech, think about the stories that would resonate at your organizations and use them frequently, because that will help our colleagues better understand how to have a plan giving conversation. Let's also look for ways to incorporate more repetition in what we do with our colleagues. Remember the discussion about what promotes learning and how important repetition is. Let's think about how we can incorporate that into our conversations with our colleagues. Um, are there opportunities at your organization to have regular lunch and learns, perhaps to have case studies that where you can discuss with colleagues particular gift situations? Or perhaps your organization is set up in a way where it would be appropriate for you to meet on a regular basis with other gift officers, once a quarter, once a month, where you can review certain prospects, review the strategy, review possible talking points and ways to approach those conversations. Think about what works for you to increase the repetition that you have in working with each individual gift officer, whether in a group setting or in a one-on-one, because it will be the repetition that will help build the sustained learning. Now, as we think about how to incorporate more repetition, let me acknowledge that there can be a time and place to do broader training sessions or uh, the stereotypical plan giving seminar. And these do have their place. But as you're planning training, let me suggest to you to not view those as the silver bullet. Your colleagues will not be trained by attending a single seminar. We need to think about ways to take any information that may be shared in that seminar and build on that. So that way you can have regular conversations to reinforce those lessons and introduce new topics that may be beyond what you would cover in a seminar, but things that are still important and that can be repeated. So it'll be the repetition that will help our colleagues build the skills that will sustain their ability to help you grow your program. As we think about how to coach our colleagues, let's keep in mind leadership. Let's make sure that our coaching is aligned with the goals that leadership has. Now, if you work in an organization that values deferred giving, you're in a great situation. You don't need to worry about conflicting priorities. But you may work in an organization that, for many good reasons, needs to prioritize current use giving. So, as we're working with our colleagues, let's make sure that our coaching efforts is aligned with whatever those priorities happen to be. And if current use is a higher priority, let's make sure that we're talking about qualified shareable distributions, donor advised funds, and non-cash gifts like stocks and real estate, all of which can have immediate impacts on our organizations. Now, even if your leadership currently does not value deferred giving, I would not suggest that you completely retreat from focusing on deferred giving. I mean, after all, by definition, you have something of a plan giving program at your organization anyway. But I would encourage you to think about how to frame the importance of bequest intentions and in the importance of promoting deferred giving. Remember research that many of you may have already heard about from Russell James, in which his study of a history of data that's been compiled from U.S. households shows that once a person includes a charity in their estate, charitable giving increases by roughly 77%. Reminding colleagues and leadership, as is appropriate, how promoting bequest intentions not only doesn't help with the future, but also helps with current giving. Doing that can help overcome any concerns about not paying enough attention to current use giving that may be a priority in your organization. And making sure that we're aligned with those current priorities is important because our colleagues are not going to pay attention to us unless we can help them be successful in the eyes of leadership. As we think about how to encourage our colleagues to learn more about plan giving, let me encourage you to lean into an instinct many of you already have, and that's to have fun. Part of it is I would suggest just a good way to create a good work environment, but it's also strategic. Remember our discussion about social proof a little while ago. People's behavior is influenced by what they see other people doing. So think about fun environments that can help encourage your colleagues to participate in learning more about plan giving. Think about perhaps doing a plan giving happy hour. Or if you're having a standard training session, think about ways to make that training session fun. There's a colleague, whenever he's leading a training session, who always brings his enormous bag of candy. And he's always throwing packets of candy out to people who answer questions correctly. I know of another colleague who developed a planned giving Jeopardy game in an effort to try to make learning about planned giving fun. The more that you can incorporate fun into your efforts to coach our colleagues, the more that we can encourage people to participate. And the more that people see others participating, that creates a virtuous cycle where more and more people will want to learn about planned giving. And the last thing I want to share is the importance of recognition. Again, this is an intuition that I suspect most of you already have. Uh, Most planned giving colleagues, that I've gotten to know over time want to be very generous with recognizing those who have helped with planned giving success. Let me suggest to you that not only is the right thing to do and the nice thing to do, it also is the strategic thing to do. Again, think about social proof. We want our colleagues to see other colleagues who are having planned giving success. So the more that they see other people having success, that will incent them to try to learn more so they can have that success. Now, the recognition can take a wide variety of forms. It could be as simple as a shout out during a staff meeting. It could be an email blast when recognizing those who helped bring a significant planned gift to closure. Or I'm aware at some larger organizations, they've actually developed planned giving newsletters where once a month they'll send out information to the entire organization and include, in addition to their useful bits of information to share, they'll include stories about colleagues who have done really good work in helping to identify and close planned gifts. The type of recognition is limited only by the culture of your organization and your own creativity. But think about how to incorporate recognition into your efforts to engage your colleagues. The more that you can celebrate others' plan giving success, the more that you can encourage others to try to emulate them. Jen, that's all I have prepared. Looks like we have about 15 minutes or so for questions.
Hi, Steve. Yes, thank you so much. And I do encourage the attendees to go ahead and put your questions in the Q&A. We have one in there from Eric that's been in there from the very beginning of the presentation. So I think just in general, what do you feel are the expectations that should be set on your board members? Should they be taught about planned giving? Should they be expected to make a planned gift? Should they expected to be soliciting planned gifts? Eric says that some of his fundraising staff say, oh, our board members are too smart for planned giving, or they don't need to learn about it. They have their own attorneys. That's not something that we need to spend time with them on. So thoughts about that?
Eric, great question. First of all, let me share a brief story as it relates to board members and the importance of not assuming anything. I am recalling a story years ago where I was participating in a significant volunteer event, and it had some of the universities very significant volunteers, people who were running really large corporations, very sophisticated people. And the topic of my work came around, and we're talking about the power of bequest intentions. You would have thought I had just discovered the Rosetta Stone. Um, we need to remember that our board members are very successful in their field of work. We can never assume that they know philanthropy. Sometimes we have to be careful because sometimes some board members may assume they know more than they may actually do. And we want to be careful to be very respectful and supportive to help guide them in ways that are appropriate for the organization and safe for the board member. So in working with our boards, we do want to make sure our boards are aware that plan giving exists, that our organizations are open for plan giving business, and that that just like we would want our board members to make at least annual gifts on a regular basis, we at least would want our board members to consider a planned gift. I think we do need to be careful that because of the size of a planned gift, or the size of what it can be, and the many different personal situations, I've heard differing opinions on how hard to push on a board commitment for a planned gift as compared to an outright gift, which I think is more common in terms of striving for 100% participation. But still, promoting planned gifts among the board is valuable, is important. I would suggest should be encouraged. Because if they're on the board, presumably they're among the people in your given community or in your given organization who care most deeply about the future of the organization. So it only should be natural for them to be open to it. But the last piece of the question in terms of how much they should get involved dovetails with our work with our colleagues. Let's keep in mind what our board members are good at, why they're there, and then why we as staff are there. Our board members may be in a position to help us solicit planned gifts. And if you assess that they can help with that peer-to-peer solicitation is fantastic. But whether an individual board member has that interest and those skills, I suggest we want to determine on a person-to-person basis. And even if we are working with a board member that we want to be involved with planned giving, I would work with them the same way as I would with a colleague that who's on the staff. I would keep it simple and make sure that the concepts that we're talking about are basic enough where the board member can grasp them and have success.
We have a couple of questions, Steve, that have come in about your thoughts on setting performance metrics for major gift officers regarding plan giving conversations or commitments. And if you do recommend, what types of goals are the most effective?
Great question. And I've been in advancement for more years than I like to think about. And I share this just to give us a bit of perspective. The metrics question in all my years being in advancement is a thorny one because there are many people, many leaders have very different perspectives on them. And there's the adage that you get what you measure. And sometimes that's good. Sometimes that may lead to non-strategic behavior. What at Virginia Tech, the way that we are organized, I'll use our experience as an example. We do not have specific planned gift targets or metrics or quotas. Our gift officers are assessed first and foremost on new gifts and commitments that are able to close, of which planned gifts are included. There is not a metric as to where those new gifts and commitments have to come from. Related to that, as we do our work at Virginia Tech, as we are planning out our work for the upcoming fiscal year, we encourage our gift officers to identify which planned gift prospects do you think you'll spend the most time focusing on this upcoming fiscal year. The idea is to encourage our colleagues to focus on who's going to be most strategic, so that way they don't fall into the rut of just ignoring planned gifts. When I've worked in organizations and under different leadership, they had different metrics. And I have worked in situations where planned a metric of closing a certain number of planned gifts has been required. My experience has been that metric tends to be ignored because leadership in most any nonprofit will value current dollars first for obvious reasons, and arguably they should. So in terms of what gets focused on, my experience has been the number of planned gifts closed has never been enforced as rigorously. And when you think about a holistic approach with our donor base, perhaps it doesn't need to be enforced rigorously as long as we have management mechanisms to help make sure that our colleagues are having planned gift conversations. And one mechanism would be that planned gifts can count toward solicitor credit, gift credit for evaluation purposes in a manner similar to other types of gifts. That is a perspective, but I'm also mindful that differing needs of different organizations may drive the need for different metrics.
Sure. We have a couple questions I think are kind of quick that maybe we can knock out. Melissa said that you said that there are 3 areas that all gift officers should be able to introduce and teach about. The first was bequest, which include beneficiary designations, CGAs, but what was the third one?
Actually, I would suggest for most organizations, not CGAs. Now, CGAs may be something that you do need to pay attention to depending on your organization. I would suggest, and again, this is just my opinion, bequest intentions, qualified charitable distributions, because over the past number of years, QCDs have become a significant source of current revenue for most nonprofits. And we have found that always is a brand new crop of individuals turning age 70 and a half who aren't aware of the benefits of QCD giving. And a lot of our colleagues aren't aware of it either. So talking about QCDs and how to promote that can produce significant immediate revenue for our organizations. And then non-cash giving, stocks and real estate primarily, because and Russell James has research that demonstrates you really amplify your organization's ability to raise larger dollars. We can talk about non-cash gifts.
That's correct. We actually have a webinar if you guys want to check it out called Cash is Not King that Russell did for us. It's on our webinars page. And then the QCD, just another thing, another way we talk about it as well is the IRA charitable rollover. I think that's kind of an interchangeable term with the QCD. Right, right. Okay.
Yeah. In fact, I go back and forth as to which to use.
Right.
And it seems like half the people are familiar with one and half the other.
Sure. So can you give an example about the rule of 3 that you've done and or how you answer a question with a question?
Well, think about some the topics we've covered in this presentation. I've tried to make sure each segment was limited to 3 bullets at a time in an effort to try to make sure that that we have easily accessible chunks of information. There's lots more we could talk about, but we had in putting together this presentation, just like any message you would put together at your organization, you have to make choices. So that'd be an immediate example. And in terms of answering a question with a question, think, do you recall the earlier slide in which I raised the question about how to ask questions? The in that slide, I wanted to introduce the topic by posing a question to ourselves as to how we learn. When we're faced with a question, what we want to do is to try to pivot as quickly as we can to help our colleagues answer their own question. it's probably easiest to see when we're puzzling over strategy. Steve, what should I say to this particular donor? Well, John, what would you suggest? What's your experience been? What do you think a person who has given Virginia Tech 30 years worth of giving, what do you think that may show about their inclination? By trying to think about the points we want to convey, but to reframe them as questions can be another useful tool to help us answer a question with a question.
So you did talk about some tactics like lunch and learns and happy hours. What has been your best strategy that has been most successful for getting people to attend to these things?
Um, the making it convenient and making it and creating repetition as to how you communicate. People are busy, so we have to think about the different ways to lower the barrier for attendance. A Zoom option is very helpful. Uh, Doing something during the lunch hour or at the end of the day is also helpful because those are times where we may have fewer meetings or fewer commitments, and so we can break away from work more readily.
So we have a question about um, really about how those that are not in plan giving fear that they don't want to bring up the conversation with the donor because they're afraid that they don't know enough and that they'll get themselves into a conversation that they can't answer the questions. And so they'd rather just not even broach the topic. So, how would you recommend? Um, what would you say about that? Do you have language that you would give that person?
This language I want to attribute it to Pam Davidson. She's where I first heard it, and it's language I would encourage all of us to adopt because planned giving can be drilled down into a single question. Would you be willing to support Virginia Tech if I could show you how? Now, our colleagues can adapt that question so that way they don't assume responsibility for showing us how, but that's easy enough to do. Uh, our organization could show you how if you have an interest. So, reassuring our colleagues that they don't have to know planned giving. The more they can spot opportunities, the better. But planned giving fundamentally is just helping people figure out how to give. And even if they don't have all the answers, they know somebody at your organization that can help.
I think one of the things Pam also says is, I don't know the answer to that, but I will find out and I'll get back to you. So, not to be afraid of questions because you always just, you're honest. You say, I don't know that answer. I will find out.
Admitting what we don't know is a wonderful fundraising tool because, first of all, it helps make sure we don't get over our skis. But more fundamentally, it's an authentic uh, human reaction. No one knows everything, but demonstrating that you're interested in your donors and that you're going to make effort to help them help strengthen our relationships. That's some of our best fundraising work is done. Jen, as you say, with what Pam shares. I don't know. Let me get back to you.
We are out of time. Thank you so much, Steve. We have a couple questions left. Steve has offered his email address. It's on the screen. It's clarks@vt.edu. That we do have an anonymous person that asked for um, uh, recommendations on where they could recruit someone. So if you want to, whoever that sent that in, if you want to reach out to Steve through his email address, I'm sure he could help you with that. And then if you have any questions about Stelter, our services, our programs, you can reach out to Nathan or myself. You can visit us at stelter.com. You will get an email tomorrow from me that will have a link with the recording, presentation slides, and also Steve has provided an additional reading recommendations PDF. Stevie brought up a lot of fabulous books in the webinar. So he has put together kind of a bibliography of that you can also download. So look for my email tomorrow and you can get all of those things. So thank you so much, Steve, for your time for the last hour and sharing your expertise with us. I'm sure everyone appreciated it. And thank you to everyone who joined us today. And I hope you all have a good afternoon. Thanks. Bye-bye.